welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast week in mobile games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. We've got a special episode today. We're going to focus on GDC and Pocket Gamer Connect San Francisco. So for that, I'm pleased to welcome Chris James, CEO at Steel Media, back, and debutant Steel Media COO Dave Bradley. How are you both doing? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank
Hello.
you.
I didn't know your name was debutant. It's a new name. Hello.
Hello.
How was your trip? Well, our trip back was quite interesting, I thought.
We all came back on the same trip, though. We did okay, right? We all came back on the Friday on the same Friday night.
Except for the bit where the plane was like, I'm not sure if this plane's going to crash.
We had a lot of turbulence in the first hour. A lot of turbulence.
It wasn't great.
But as you say, we were fortunate to get on a plane at all, because this was in the middle of the fire crisis at Heathrow. So many of our colleagues had been turned around and sent back to San Francisco. I think that the editor of your opposite site, PocketGamer.com, was delayed by 2 days, and longer than that, I think, actually, maybe 3 days in total getting back. So in a way, we were lucky to get on the plane, but then the ride itself was a roller coaster. So, swings and roundabouts.
It wasn't quite a roller coaster, because it didn't go quite up to the top before it dropped, but it did drop down.
It wasn't fun either.
And Dave had the pleasure of sitting next to me. Anybody ever flies with me will know that I fly a lot, but I'm not the world's best with turbulence, and especially we've now had a couple of medicinals on the way, and yeah, I was clutching the seat. I clutched the seat in front of me, which is very helpful for the person sat in front of me, and just looked nervous, which I think it spreads an aura of relaxation through the cabin. I think people like to see someone else holding on like it's their last flight ever.
Really makes everyone at ease, puts everyone at ease, you know.
Yeah, that's what I do. I've got one very short, this is not GC, one related story. When I once went to Barcelona, I go there quite a lot anyway. And if you go to find to Barcelona, like a lot of places, you're coming over the sea, and sometimes because of the change in air pressure, there can be quite a drop. So one time we were coming in, I wasn't really used to it, and there's this sudden drop, and I was like gripping onto the kind of armrest, as really tightly, looking kind of terrified in that wonderful way again that makes everyone else feel calm. And as I kind of eased up and turned around, I realised I was holding onto the leg of the man sitting next to me. He was like a kind of Japanese or Korean businessman, and in that wonderful kind of Asian patient way, he just kind of looked at me and smiled and nodded, and I was like, "I'm so sorry," but yeah, we still keep in touch.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Billy, I've derailed it already. Let's get on with the
segue. You are gonna you enjoyed it so much, you've launched an event in Barcelona this year,
and also doing events in Asia. So there you go. It's all connected, right?
So that one trip has
that one trip changed my life. Maybe it changed his. I don't know. We don't keep in touch.
So we just mentioned we're doing Pocket Gamer Connects Barcelona, June 3rd and 4th. Upcoming, we've also got Dubai Game Expo Summit, powered by PGC, May 7th to 8th. We've got PGC Summit in Shanghai, July 30th, and Helsinki on October 7th and 8th. We've also got Jordan later this year, and I think we're looking at some other events. And Mobile Games Awards at Gamescom. So keep an eye out for all of that. I'll also be at Gamescom Latam end of this April. What month are we in?
We're not in April. Yeah, it's March still. March has gone on a long time. The year has both gone quickly, and March seems to be going on forever. We still got March isn't even over till next week. It goes on forever, March.
It's ridiculous.
You're going to be going to Gamescom Latam, and then flying back all the way from Brazil, straight onto the Dubai Game Expo Summit. So you're a trooper. You're going to be in 3 different time zones in the space of a day, I think.
All right, well, let's jump into it then. So we're just going to talk about GDC, what we thought of it, trends, insights. But I guess to kick things off, the obvious thing that everyone's kind of talking about is it was a quieter year. And beforehand, we were kind of wondering, like, oh, have you heard, like, so-and-so's not going? What have you heard? And I was like, thinking when we get there, it might be hard to tell, because allegedly 30,000 people.
They announced 30,000 attendees,
in town, maybe, at the event. But actually, it was quite obvious, I would say. The show floor was, there's less people on there. There were fewer booths, which we can go into in a bit as well. Even just around town, Dave, you were saying just before this that the hotels were quieter, like the W.
Yeah.
People saying they could just grab a table.
And it varied throughout the day. I mean, it's an interesting one. You're absolutely right. I mean, they have announced 30,000 attendees, but it didn't feel like that live on the ground. I mean, I still got all the meetings I wanted to have. I had some good quality meetings. I met the people I wanted to meet, but it felt a little bit more sparse. And absolutely, we've commented on this. Normally in conference week in San Francisco, you can be relied on all the hotels along there. The usual suspects, there's the W, there's the Intercontinental, the Marriott Marquis. The Marriott still actually was kind of buzzing during the core parts of the day. But yeah, we walked through the after a Yuki event on Thursday, thinking to ourselves, well, we're bound to see some familiar faces in here because everyone's at W. And it was a ghost town. And that was shocking in itself. And I know that doesn't necessarily reflect what's going on in the show floor, but it maybe shows who's in town.
Yeah, no, I concur. I think there's a couple of things to me. It was definitely smaller than last year. I know they've said 30,000. I'm not going to dispute what they're saying. They've got their own data sources and whatever. I know these events do things in different ways. We tend to, when we talk about delegate numbers, we also talk about people have actually registered one way or another.
Individual email addresses that are
like
registered.
Footfall, like some events, like a lot of the consumer events always have these massive numbers, and a lot of the time it's like, well, it's a 3 or 4 day event. This is how many people came in and out every day, right, sort of thing. But so I don't know where that 30,000 came from. I don't know what the number was last year if they've listed that. I haven't got that to hand, but that could be interesting because there's no way they can spin it as not being quieter than last year, and that's both on the show floor and in town a little bit. However, I have a caveat to this. There's a lot of people going, there's a lot of kind of snarky people, but we should all be going like, oh, it's over, it's dead, it's E3, it's never going to happen, blah, blah. The scale is still incredible, but the number of people that were there is more than you have any possible chance of meeting. Everybody you could want to meet, every major company, there'll be someone there, right? Everyone's coming away, their LinkedIn's full of, I met so-and-so, here's all I met this week, blah, blah, I had 1,000 meetings. Well, you'd still have a lot of meetings. The show floor was still stuff to look at. We'll talk about that in a bit. And also, it was just a bit more pleasant, if I'm honest, as a kind of an attendee experience. Being able to get space to sit down and have your lunch somewhere, being able to actually talk to people on stands because it wasn't like 4 deep, but being able to kind of sit down in a hotel even, it was definitely different to previous years. But the experience was actually kind of better, I felt. Generally, I will talk about it again as well. I thought there was a kind of quietly, I don't know if upbeat's the word, but quietly optimistic maybe tone underneath it all. So it was kind of pleasant. San Francisco was also much nicer. San Francisco last year, kind of bit hellscapey, awful for them as well, but a lot of homeless people everywhere, people awful. And this year, certainly in the bits I walked through, it felt like, that something had been done to address that, hopefully for the benefit of those people that have been moved along or put in, a shelter or whatever, as much as the people walking through the streets. It felt better. And I enjoyed the trip. I've come away again thinking, oh, I missed this and I missed that, and there's 100 things I wish I'd do. But yeah, definitely quite, but not like dead, not like on its deathbed as a show or anything.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fringe activities as well, absolutely. Like you say, definitely kind of a little bit of sense that it's lighter, but there was so much going on. You could have gone to not just counting the event itself, which had 1,000 speaking sessions or something at it. I mean, around town, loads of parties, loads of gatherings, loads of invitations. I mean, you could have done 10 things a day after the GDC doors shut, right? So it still felt that there was a lot of activity in it. Activity in the games industry.
I don't know if more, but there was more good stuff, it felt like, off-site. Like people were building slightly more substantial things. I know Xsolla had their Xsolla house, Netflix had their Netflix thing in the Metro.
They took over the top of the Metro, didn't they?
And Video had a thing, Epic had a thing. There was all these other things that were happening outside. Obviously, UK, Department of Trade, whatever, had their space.
Yeah, the workplace.
Meet to Match had its space. Obviously we ran PGC, which we'll talk about. There was a lot of kind of quite decent stuff going on outside the show, which as a show organizer is awful. I know that. And as a GDC might not like that. And that might be behind what they're trying to do in the future, move this festival vibe. But yeah, I think there was still a lot. There's plenty there to go on, to have your meetings, to get business done, to celebrate where the games industry is and the opportunities. A lot of people I spoke to said they had a great show in terms of a business perspective. They got a lot done. Yeah, and there was things moving again, which is obviously kind of key because there's been a bit of a hold up in the industry for a while with funding, and not that's completely gone. But yeah, I don't know. I thought the side events were really good, including, of course, numero uno amongst them was ours, obviously.
I kind of see GDC as a bit of a reflection of the industry because there's so many people that go. So all that kind of the doomsayers about, oh, this event is on the slides needs to change. Like maybe it does need to change in some regards, to be fair, but you know, all the layoffs that we've had, and they are significant, right? Tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs. I'm sure many of which might have gone to this event.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you know, these events are very expensive if you want to go into the show. So again, lots of people that are laid off in the industry, or maybe just general think actually can't afford it this time. And again, businesses are kind of holding back a lot of money. And that was another thing you could probably see on the show floor, was that they decided it wasn't worth it. And also with those side events, I wonder if there's a move to, they just want to be closer to the developers, and perhaps the booths don't do that for them anymore. So Exola renting out the Howard, I think it was like next door, basically. It's just maybe a better way for them to engage existing clients and potentially new prospects.
Yeah, I think you have more control if you do your own thing. You can decide exactly what goes on, how it's branded. You can do things in the space without having to go through loads of red tape or pay through the nose for everything. So I can understand why it is, and I agree with you absolutely. Depending on the account, it could have been 40,000 people in or around our industry kind of lost their roles in the last 18 months. Now, obviously, there's been some hiring as well, but generally, there's a lot of people at work, and as you say, studios maybe cut back some projects, and they're not like, you know, it's the same studio company that's laying off 10,000 people or 500 people or 50 people is probably not in the same breath going, oh no, let's send all the senior execs to GDC. Well, there is an element to which this is definitely a business show, like our shows are business shows, but there's definitely an element within companies where these trips are kind of seen as like perks, or not jollies exactly, but the kind of, you know, part of it is this is a perk for the industry and the execs to go out there. And I think what you saw this year exactly is, I think there's still, most companies were still there, but maybe rather than sending like 20 or 30 people, it's like 2 or 3 or 5, you know, you know, unless they were hosting a thing. Like, you know, some companies that would have been different, service companies are still going to send their full complement, but maybe the game development teams and some of the tools and stuff just didn't go as full on. You also had, and this is notable, and we haven't talked about this anywhere yet, and I've not seen it mentioned, NVIDIA, who are still, you know, very important part of a games ecosystem, the sort of people you'd expect to have a big booth, considering how much money they're making right now. I'm sure GDC would have expected that and hoped for that. They're running their own show down the road, an AI show. Fair enough, it's not a game show explicitly, but I'm sure a lot of people were either going to that as well, or would have looked at that instead to check that out. But yeah, whereas NVIDIA, you might have expected a big booth in the future, like they basically had what I can only describe as a popcorn stand, or like, you know, it's basically, they might as well just put like an A4 thing on the wall going, NVIDIA was here, you know, so, here, tear off a strip for a phone number and contact us. It was, I mean, you know, great they've chipped some money into GDC, and I think it's important to support these events. Otherwise, any reason, you know, with all that, it doesn't exist. But yeah, it was kind of funny that it was kind of like almost not insulting, and sure it wasn't intended that way, but it just felt a little bit like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll definitely support you. What's the absolute cheapest thing we can do and the lowest way we can go? Can we sponsor the, you know, can we sponsor the shoe scrapers outside or something?
Sorry, we're hosting a side event. We'll support you with this.
Yeah. You know, and we're hosting a side event, and I, you know, we as event organisers, we don't particularly love it when everyone's doing their own thing, because the core event, this is what happened with E3. I think E3's demise is completely different, a lot of different factors, not just this. But one of those issues is if everybody starts going outside, and they all go, it's great, everyone's in town, I'm going to do my thing here. But if the main event doesn't survive, then everyone isn't in town, and then they've got to then, you know, bringing people together, getting people together, that's a really valuable thing when everybody will automatically come to a place together. That's not hard. That's not easy to generate. There's not many events. We've been going 11 years making events, and we're getting some really great traction with some of our events now, but it's still not on the scale of a Gamescom or a GDC or E3 as was. And like, you know, you've got to kind of try and support these things while you can. That said, I'm not here to shill for Informa. I'm sure they're big boys. They can look after themselves. And they might be a little bit complicit in their own, you know, in their own kind of struggles a little bit with pricing and everything. But I do hope that we find a balance, and that you know, it can grow. But I don't know what their economics are, but I don't sense that it didn't feel like an event that was just on the verge of dying. It just felt, if you went for the first time, you go, wow, this is great. Look at the games and there's a lot of stuff going on. If you've been for the last, you know, 20 years or 4 years or whatever, you go, oh, it's a bit smaller now, isn't it? What's going on?
I would say that there's a mix of things, right? Some people are like, well, Gamescom's kind of where it's at now, and then but some other people, one CEO, he was just like, he's been going to GDC for like 21 years, and he said actually it could have been a reflection of his business needs, but he said that this was probably he had his most substantial meetings he's probably ever had this year, probably because there was fewer people and people a bit more focused.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You probably have a better chance of getting in. And I think also, as you said, it's a reflection of the industry. The industry's had a couple of difficult years. Like, different parts of it are running at different speeds. I think mobile has been more robust and is recovering faster. PC console still in the doldrums in many respects. Just because of the cost profile, of those games and the limited audience, the competition. But it did feel like maybe now the taps are turning on, like the publishers now need projects again. Some investment is coming in from wherever it's coming, not necessarily VCs, a whole different topic, but money is kind of starting to flow a little bit, and publishers are realizing they need projects again. So we've gone through this period of stuff being cancelled, and now they're looking to sign. So if you're a developer out there, there's still more supply than demand, but there's a chance of getting big projects. I also spoke to some people out there who said they had an incredible, it's been an amazing event for them in terms of sort of deals and agreements signed, and so it was.
Well, on that with the developers as well, you're absolutely right. I went to the day of the devs because we're talking about Fringe events. They had it was really big. They took over a space down by the waterfront the day before, and people were queuing around the block to get in. It was a genuine blockbuster all the way around the corners to get in, and the event itself was full of developers, and so I think, as well as speaking to the fact that there were all these Fringe events taking place, I think it was quite a good place to go if you wanted to see new games.
So yeah, it was a bit smaller, but not dead. So if we want to talk about other trends about it, like I said, I think, and we said a few individual companies seem to have really good times. I think there was, and it happened in London as well, PGC London. I came out of it quite buoyant. I always, enjoy our event. It's a brilliant event. Everybody loves it. It's nice when everybody loves the thing you do, right? And I came out of that, and underlying for the mobile industry a lot, there was a lot of different strands coming together. People weren't like popping champagne corks everywhere, but it was upbeat again. It wasn't go, oh God, we're worried about this, and we have to. It was more like we can see the path to growth now. It's not the same it was. We've got to do things differently, but things are happening, things are moving. Mobile, certainly, and other spaces is moving on. And I think GDC felt like a continuation of that. Like, it was kind of not everybody popping champagne corks or street parties, but there was a kind of underlying optimism. And I know, like I say, in Snarkstown, Media Town, you won't necessarily hear that all the time, but because there was also, negativity. But it would be very easy to paint a negative picture. But generally, I think, and it's less pretty exciting and less good for clicks, but generally there is a sort of a mood amongst large swathes of the industry, not all of it, that the opportunities are coming around again, that revenues are peaking up, that we've kind of adjusted. We're getting our mojo back, and it's maybe not where we were in the pandemic or even pre-pandemic exactly the same, but we're adjusting to what Stu Dinsey calls the new normal, and we're kind of building again. And I felt that from a lot, but there's a lot of kind of this just general upbeat vibe, going around. I say it wasn't kind of crazy parties or anything, but it was kind of generally things are right, things are good. We think we're gonna have a good year. So, did you feel like, Dave? Did that?
Yeah, I did. And it is interesting. There were you see what you seek out, and I took it upon myself to take note of the AI games that are out there. This is something I'm following at the moment. I do this newsletter for Pocket Gamer called AI Game Changers, and so I was taking. There was loads of people using those tools in interesting ways. I saw loads of games came my way, and some really big people getting into that space. And so I saw some really really exciting things in that area. So that was interesting. I saw there were like I mentioned, at some of these indie Fringe events, loads of really creative people, perhaps spurred on by the fact that maybe they lost their day job at a bigger company, started indie studios and things. Really, really competent indie games that I saw in a number of the activities that were around the space. There was the Day of the Devs. There was Courage as well. There was the thing at the next to the Moscone Centre where GDC takes place. There's the Children's Museum, and they had a game day in there, didn't they? Which there were a lot of interesting international projects.
Showcase thing, yeah. And that was,
exactly.
I guess this is in our job, like where you're writing stuff, you're managing stuff. I'm sort of trying to sell stuff or get deals done. You don't get to play all the time games, or see as many games, which is a sad thing about being in the industry rather than being a player. And yeah, and I saw a lot of good games and some real quality out there. And I think you could see, as is always the case, but the indie level is where the innovations come, where the new ideas are coming from, and I think there's a new bit, maybe a bit, not to respect, but a recognition of that, and a feeling that maybe it's not all about AAA. I saw a couple of things predicting the future, these big panels in there talking about what we should need to do, and it's much more talking about MVP, getting out quickly, doing something, let's get out there, test the audience, and not 5 years, spend hundreds of millions. It was more about learning from the kind of indie AAA, I guess, or A rather than AAA. I think that AAA, AA certainly is a market that's struggling a little bit to find its, to see if where it goes, because we've seen some big fails, and obviously those bets are really big. And there were on this panel, so there's a lot of these luminary characters talking, have been around the industry for a long time, and they were saying, if I had X million, like 50 million, 100 million, I'd be probably making 20, 50, 100 indie game bets rather than trying to put it all into one or two big games.
Challenge for those is launch. I went to the Newzoo presentation. So Newzoo have got their updated report for this year. And it was admittedly this was the PC and console games one. So mobile, we'll have to talk separately. But I went to that presentation. What was interesting was the number of overall games players in the world is growing. The number of hours spent gaming is growing. The number of games is growing. But it's really hard to break in, because almost all game time, I think it's like 67% or something now, is spent on games that are over 6 years old. So there's definitely the other trend that they explicitly talked about on stage, but I think we can also observe is, as you say, there's a lot of indie games coming in, but a lot of where gamers are spending their time are on these kind of long-running franchises, right? These
forever games, franchises, all that.
And that's a challenge that the industry.
I mean, that is a challenge, but to have a forever game or a franchise, to launch a new one of those, I was making a LinkedIn comment about this the other day about why, this is a completely different topic, about why I think Savvy Scopely spending $3.5 billion on Pokemon Go is probably going to look like good business in a couple of years, and people going, oh, it's a bit a lot, isn't it? But actually, to get a forever game, to get a game is so hard. Like this, they spent well over $1 billion with Monopoly Go, and people don't know this. I always get surprised when I find it out again. There's been like almost 7 years of development to get Monopoly Go, multiple teams involved. Now, fair enough, some of that's post, but so much work has gone in, and that wasn't a guaranteed success either. But there's so much effort to get a new game out of scale that buying something that's already in there. That's why you're getting all this consolidation is seems like a much smarter play. Whereas smaller games like the Return, because your outlay is so much smaller, you don't need to be top of the App Store. If you've got, and if you it's like VCs. If you get a bunch of investments, you only need one or two of them to go off. If you're lucky, you get a Balatro, but there's not many of those, I appreciate. But that Balatro is probably the most mentioned game, I think, in every talk or place I went to. It was up there with AI and Balatro were the things that were kind of mentioned a lot. I didn't see loads of talks, but the ones I did, it was always a kind of a dropped name, just because it's the outlay to the success is incredible. So I think upbeat, but yeah, there's definite challenges. There's too many games, and as you say, people aren't playing. It's hard to get people into new games. So yeah, I think
some of the points that you made there, like one of the problems I think GDC had this year is just there was no really big, exciting announcements. There's no State of Unreal, for example, which I literally cleared my morning for, and then filled, and then found out Netflix was on. But not that that's a sore subject. Mentioned it a bunch of times. But there's no big buzz around that, I guess. And the big games this time, like they're great, like Balatro, Astrobot. I think there probably wasn't many I don't think there were many huge games that developers were also talking about that was really getting people excited. Oh, Hideo Kojima's in town and they're going to talk about Metal Gear or the Fox engine. Like that, I remember that was years ago, but that was quite exciting at the time. I think we didn't really capture that.
I think 2025 has a problem in that a lot of people are waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6, right? Yeah, this is taking up a lot of the oxygen. And I was joking with Ben Porter from Newzoo, and he's saying, trying to find advice for people trying to launch new games. And I said, So is the advice, be Grand Theft Auto if you want to be in games? And he went,
do you know how much the Grand Theft Auto budget is? I saw this in a post. I haven't verified this. Do you know how much is being spent on this? I presume this includes the marketing plans as well. What number would you go up to? And this is in a LinkedIn post. I haven't verified this, but someone put out this. Yeah, what do you think,
Dave?
I don't know. It's Monopoly. I don't know. A bit.
$2 billion.
What?
$2 billion. $2 billion. It's more than it cost to build the Burj Khalifa. That was the argument.
Hey, is that the entire cost of the Star Wars franchise to Disney?
I mean, yeah, exactly. You could buy a chunk of Marvel. I mean, like that's. And again, I've got to go through and properly vet those figures and what they came from. But it is going to be the most expensive game ever. I don't know how they've calculated that exactly.
Except for Star Citizen.
But still, and the expectation is it will make a return, right? Probably a decent one, and it will go on for years to come. But that is the problem. That is the problem of competing in the high end. Is you're up against stuff like that. Even in the mobile high end, you're up against Monopoly Go spending $1 billion on UA. Like, you're not going to compete. Just let it go. You're not going to be up there. Like, it's like we run a great conference. I'm not sitting there going, oh, how can I beat Gamescom? That's happening. That's a thing over there. Great. Love it. Love going there. But, maybe in a few years. But right now, it's kind of like you've got to find your lane, and that's what it's about. You've got to find the opportunity, the niche you can get into and make money. And I think this is why the VC, one of the reasons the VC thing, one of the common topics that I heard in conversation around it is that VCs are kind of back and these investors are back, but only really meaningfully at kind of seed and, maybe up to Series A level. After that, there's just the appetite just isn't there because, you're either obviously going to be the next GTA or Monopoly Go, or it's clear by the time you've got to Series A, you're not. And so there's the big problem with games now is, and for AAA games, is that the money required to really push in is not necessarily there. Certainly not from VCs. It might be there from publishers. It might be there from other metrics, but they're going to back things to get started. They see there still is some opportunities in content, but again, they're moving. They've always have been really. They're looking all more into more tools and platforms and not so much in individual content. But there is money coming out there for game studios again. So that was an interesting thing. I don't know. There was also there's a little bit which I'm kind of happy about. A little bit of a counterpoint now to the ultimate respect that the hat doff into VCs, and now a little bit more of a, all right, are you guys experts? Why are we listening to you guys anymore? Like, when we actually needed you, you all fucked off. Pardon my French. And what do you know about games again? Anyway, I'm seeing more and more kind of chats and posts about that, and it's a little bit less maybe kind of everyone needs money and they need to bow and scrape to get it, but a little bit more deference to the kind of masters of the financial investment universe there.
I like that in the industry now. Maybe there's a bit more honesty going around. People are like kind of having their say to VCs and also to the platform holders. That they're not as scared anymore. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's experience now. The industry's been around for a while and a lot of tough times that people are.
It's gallows humor, right? It's just gallows. It's like,
there's that.
I've been left to battle it out. I'm still here, so I'll take you all on. It's a bit of that, isn't it? So, what did you? I mean, there's other things I saw. What did you see? What was noticeable to you, Craig? Is there anything else you kind of saw that really stood out?
So a couple things. I wrote my takeaways article. I'll link in the description. One of the things I noticed was just. Again, on the show floor, there was just no game engine companies.
Right. That's amazing, isn't it?
Which
this
I couldn't
game
believe.
Development conference. There's no game development massive tools. I mean, there was motion capture tools.
On the schedule, like Unity had its, I think, developer day or developer summit for a couple of days. So, they were there, but it also at a time when Unity is still recovering its reputation.
Yeah.
Poor Epic and Godot would be like in there again, like last year, saying, "Come on, use our engine." It just wasn't any of that, like at least visibly. So that kind of shocked me, and I think Epic's just taking it like they just want to create their own audience now, so they're moving it instead of Unreal to Unreal Fest, etc. And then the other thing was we spoke a bit about AI. I'd say that was the big trend of the show, but it's just a trend that probably will never have like a major announcement, unless it is. I don't know. Like Unreal announces, like just make a game, a click of a button, done. But then developers will be like, "What the hell?"
There's a bit. I mean, there are tools that are kind of touting that or approaching that, and I don't think it's there yet. But there are a couple of companies there that were saying things like that. But you're right. The kind of a major announcement thing. The thing about AI is that it's been, and I like the fact working in this, in the sector, being a journalist for tech and games, that there's so much kind of disruption activity. But it's almost like we've got a little bit used to it now. You're talking about the latest OpenAI model, and the next week DeepSeek comes along, and everyone's talking about that, and so it's almost like there's this kind of rolling stream of improvements and changes. So you aren't going to see suddenly an event like GDC some kind of big rollout of something. There just seems to be a sort of persistent.
I think with AI as well, though, again, talking from panels and more conversation, there was a lot of angles on AI. People talking about agents and using AI for motion capture and specific things. And I think there's a bit of a evolution as we moved from AI wonder to practical AI, and it's definitely in the practical AI phase. But there's also in that kind of sort of like pushing back, lack of deference. There's also a bit of like, okay, well, we know what AI we don't want AI to do, and what AI is actually not that great for. And there was some criticism of tools. There's somebody who was mentioning this kind of quote, which has also been on LinkedIn. Was in this talk I was in? I was saying that some big AI company or tech company or analyst probably had gone, in 2025, 50% of people will be using of code will be made by AI. In 2026, 100% of code will be made by AI. And this other guy goes, yeah, in 2027, it'll be like 50% of code. And then 2028, there'll be loads of work for coders to go in and work out what the hell AI has been building.
Unpick all the bad code, yeah.
And we'll be taking it all apart again. And it is that kind of thing where, we all see it, we all play with AI. And there is the moment of wonder is, and that immediate return is incredible, but it's never quite what you want. And getting it to do exactly what you want and to have control of it and to kind of have agency and you can't in a narrative game. They were talking about an example of using AI for NPCs, and they said like after the first 50 maybe, but like in a narrative game which has quests and it has a tone you want to control, you can't just leave that open to like random. Like the control is just not there. Like if we took off going completely different things,
There's definitely some value in scripted experiences. But
yeah,
the interesting thing,
but you have to control it. They were talking about it's kind of about the fences within which the tools for control of the AI. Give it some. Obviously, part of it is it's creative, but it's how to keep it bound in is within the game.
So, I'll tell you what. On that note, you're absolutely right. There's kind of a couple of sort of ways that AI is being used, a kind of couple of buckets. And I'm interested that we're going to the second one. So the first one is processes that we already had, using AI to accelerate them and use them faster in our development pipeline, right? Like getting it to write and create stuff. And that seems to be a topic of conversation in the last couple of years. But then there's the question about what actual new at runtime experiences can we use AI to create? And what I did see, I feel, was more of that. More people not saying, well, okay, fair enough, we can get AI to do stuff for us in the office, but more like what actually is he going to bring to games? And that was interesting. And I saw this might tickle you, Chris, because it actually reminds me of like 20 years ago when we were talking about this sort of artificial reality games leaking out into the world. I think there was
a great idea for those.
I know, but now with AI, there's some opportunities to do that. So I met a company called Operative, who was formed by a couple of veterans from the entertainment industry. A guy who was worked on the Pandora really early on, very senior guy from Disney. They founded this company, and basically what it is they let me have a go. So they've got this experience where you have AI agents, but you give a telephone number and you ring this AI agent. It's answered by a very realistic sounding person who's in a hospital, and it's like, oh, thank God you rang. I need you to find this thing out. And across that and Zoom calls and websites together, and it's been planned by Hollywood TV scriptwriters to follow a kind of a season pattern, which there'll end up be a cliffhanger, and then you subscribe to a season at a time. And they're using these AI agents to basically take this game out into the real world, and so you kind of ring the operative and play. I thought that was interesting. It was just interesting seeing somebody using the AI not to just design the graphics for them or write their marketing materials, which you heard a lot of in the last 2 years, but to actually at runtime create a gaming experience.
There's been a couple, haven't there, got out already, but they're a bit random and a bit kind of like early days of Roblox or something. There's two things that I've reminded of. I was talking. One of it about AI, so it segues nicely, is one of the things again that came up on a couple of these panels. I always go to the future-looking panels, and I went to a couple of individual talks, which were far too technical for me, and then I went to kind of a few visionary. What's going to happen in the next 5 years?
Everyone make that mistake every year. I end up like walking.
You end up in something which sounds great. It's about how Supercell did this thing in Brawl Stars, and it starts out really well, and then it gets into code level stuff. But no, there was an interesting point made by one of the kind of creative agencies or creative studios, and she was talking about, she's an industry veteran, and she was talking about what she wants from AI, which is an AI her. She wants someone with her tastes for writing or art style creation to be able to expand her kind of output, right? So sort of riff a little bit off what she wants. She doesn't want a general AI do everything else. She wants to go, well, I've got my, I've evolved my oeuvre, my output of games or scripts or artwork or whatever, and I now want an AI me to go and try and create more of it and see which bit I like and stuff. That was kind of seen as a bit of a holy grail for AI in the creative space, where it's kind of it's not replacing you, but it's kind of augmenting you, because it's an AI you, not an AI replacing you, if that makes sense. But then she was also saying, oh God, so bad I don't remember the name. I should have had my notes, didn't prepare very well. But that it was, the problem with that is that at the moment they have to have so much data to train these AI models that by nature they are kind of very kind of generalized, because they've been trained off to get an AI to a certain language model over a certain level. It has to have so much data. So you need a massive raw database behind it. So just your own stuff might not be enough at the moment. That's a technical problem they can't do. I don't know if I'd want that or not. It kind of feels cool. That feels like that is when you can send your work.
Your second brain, right? You're just, I do this.
That's cool, but like that's like that to me at the moment. That sounds like a lot of the chatter around we have with Web3. That it was like, oh, this is what it could do, and it's all kind of like really far away, or maybe doesn't actually. It's not. You can't actually do it, for example. Whereas some of the AI stuff is actually quite interesting because they're using it now.
You can use it now. You can experience it now.
I think AI tech has been every studio is using some of it, even if it's just as simple as taking notes or testing some headlines or whatever. But I think that was the holy grail. The Web3 thing you might be segueing into.
Well, I was going to say, just as a segue there, it might go into what you think. I think that AI might actually be this year's killer app for Web3. Actually, because AI agents that can transact with
on the blockchain,
crypto, and can play games. A lot of the Web3 companies I saw were talking about this, and particularly I should shout out to Saga. They're a publishing platform. They run a platform. They're doing loads of AI agents. They had their own Fringe event in GDC, and one of the things they would do. But there's a number of companies, including we had at Pocket Gamer Connect San Francisco, we had Mighty Bear Games. Simon Davis, the CEO, was there. And he's doing stuff with AI agents. So a lot of web companies are finding that they can actually deliver stuff with AI agents. There were
some big Web3. I mean, because again, from a part of the problem with a lot of Web3 games experiences is volume of players. Same with the metaverse, right? Like there's some interesting stuff going on, but there's not enough people there. So maybe AI has a role to fill there. But there's still Web3 money somewhere, because there's still big Web3 company booths on the show floor. Like some of the biggest. There was like regional booths, there's Web3 booths. There was about 17 motion capture studio booths. Tencent had a booth.
Tencent was the biggest by far.
Tencent was the biggest booth, and Tencent was very much Tencent. It was interesting, all this talk about Tencent breaking up and not being able to own non-Chinese companies. It was all their companies.
They were not shy.
Yeah, they were very much going, we're not just the Tencent games made in China. These are the companies we own. These are the big IPs we've got. And that was quite cool. And they were giving away the penguins and stuff as well. And then, Meta had a big booth, VR. They were VRing there, I guess. There's only really them this year doing it at scale, I think. Amazon was the one that had the biggest one, I think.
Pokey had a pretty big booth again.
Pokey, they're doing well. Yeah. That's web. That's web gaming. That's another big trend.
That's true.
They seem to be capturing that really nicely. I know that Addicting Games is doing some stuff in this space as well. What's that?
They have 90 million monthly active users.
That's huge. That's for engage. And I know, say, like we're looking at that with Enthusiast with Addicting has got it had a really big following. It's growing up again and has plans there. But Pokey's really leading the way in that space at the moment. That's really good.
I have to also say that Web3 companies going into AI is very Web3 of them.
Pragmatic.
What's the next thing we could get money for?
Well, it's a little bit like you can see these kind of all these companies that reversed out of one thing into Web3 and now going, well, no, we're not. We're more of an AI company. It's that. It's like we weren't. Exactly. A joke about the LinkedIn expert who's, I'm a metaverse expert, I'm a Web3 expert. Oh, no, I'm an AI expert. Just that constant, these kind of individuals
I
that
mean,
just
in some ways, I respect the
grift.
Respect the hustle,
yeah,
right?
yeah, the hustle. That's it. The
This
grift.
is especially in America. This is what it's all about now. We live in the land of the grift. This is the
But yeah,
grift, the hustle.
I'm not
Just keep
surprised.
repeating it, and maybe it comes true. I think that's right. I mean, I'm not anti Web3. I think there's still some interesting use
No,
cases. I think the worst thing that happened to it was the ludicrous level, and I think it didn't just damage Web3. I think it damaged the whole games investment ecosystem. Just because suddenly we went from big investments into games which actually had a business model to even bigger investments into a completely unproven business models in this Web3 thing. Will it be the next mobile? No. Will it be the next console? No. It's not. It's going to be something different, and it's just not. It's not there yet. And yeah, there's some cool stuff in there, but it's not. No one's. The only games that are really hitting are regular games that kind of have a Web3 component potentially behind them. Those are the games that people are talking about.
I would say like there wasn't Web3 like it was a few years ago when you had packed out sessions at GDC for some of those, and I think it was WeMade/WeMix. They had banners everywhere. They were the biggest sponsor by far.
Yeah.
I think they had a
3-year deal. I know how much they paid for it. It's eye-watering. I mean, that's kind of the problem. Is the problem with the booths on the show floor, unlike PG Connect's events, which are very reasonably priced.
Very reasonably priced.
Yeah, and I don't think it's entirely down to kind of like organizer greed or anything. I think it's just American economics. Like, you've got the space is ridiculous. Then you've got to pay, for the labor, and everything's got to go through this kind of structured union system.
So we're coming up to time, but I guess
What?
any
You said
final
2 hours.
imagine just a podcast you can listen to throughout your entire workday.
Radio show, isn't it? I thought we were doing a radio show.
Oh yeah, wait a minute. Have we invented radio?
I'm
Wait, is this
the new
live?
James O'Brien. I'm a James O'Brien with like more bags than me.
So do you have any final thoughts, final takeaways before we end the show?
I think there's my feeling was GDC's still here, and it's still going to be in San Francisco next year. Apparently, it's been more of a festival, 40th anniversary of them next year. So I think GDC's not going anywhere, despite some of the headlines elsewhere. And I think the games industry is not going anywhere, and I think that there's an underlying optimism. It is awful. People have lost their jobs, and it's tough. I know it's still tough out there in certain spaces, but as an industry, we're still strong. There's a lot of camaraderie. The general kindness and tolerance. I don't know that I still wouldn't change this industry for any other industry in the world. Like, I wouldn't want to be, I wouldn't want to be an investment bank or something. I wouldn't want to be like that. There's much more money can be made in other things, but I still feel these are my people. And I came out of GDC feeling optimistic, happy, and I'm sort of broadly, generally happy part of this industry, and looking forward to a load of great events in Dubai in May, Barcelona June, Shanghai in July, and then Gamescom, and then Helsinki, and more to come. I came out positive, yeah.
I can't add to that really. It was, you're absolutely right about the games industry. I think that was something that was very very palpable at Pocket Gamer Connect San Francisco as well, and actually the support the industry is getting too. I mean, we didn't mention it, but Peter Mandelson, the new ambassador to the United States, attended GDC. He was at the UK event on the Tuesday or whatever, and there was activity. So I think that the games industry's still got a lot of oomph in it, and is getting focus from the world. So yeah, my takeaway. Sorry, some of Chris's.
For anyone that doesn't know Peter Mandelson, there was a good joke that you referenced, Dave. I was just going. I was just thinking, if you search, I guess if you search the word "Sith" in the
so Peter Mandelson is currently our ambassador to the United States, but he was made a lord in the United Kingdom some time ago, and there was a joke on TV when I think it was Frankie Boyle who, hearing the news, said, "Who made him a lord? The Sith?" Which gives you some ideas about how some people feel about Peter Mandelson in the UK, but nonetheless, a man with influence who attended San Francisco last week.
And I think the games industry does. I think the governments internationally. That's the one final thing I want to say. There was a lot of not a lot, but there was definite government representation. Obviously, it's UK people, but I think governments around the world, so we're seeing with our partnerships and our activities, are seeing the value of the games ecosystem, and the value of for community, and as a business, and as a gainful employment, and also how it can bring people together. Take that, Southgate. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, just to wrap up, yeah, I agree. Like, I think the show, it was down this year. It probably does need to make changes. It sounds like it is making some changes. I think it looks like that companies just want that closer relationship that they're not getting on the show floor, which we'll see. We'll see how they adapt to that in future years. But I still think it's a reflection of the industry, and so hopefully, as the industry, hopefully bounces back over the next couple of years, we'll see GDC do that. I don't think it needs to become a Gamescom, but I'm sure it could learn from it as well. Right. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks
Good
for
to
having
have you. Good to have you again, Chris, and great to have you for the first time.
Anytime, Craig.
very
I'm
much.
always up for chatting about stuff. You need to lengthen it. It's not enough.
I've shortened the show. People don't have the attention spans anymore. Thank you
just-
very much for anyone that's already listening. For anyone that's still listening, thank you. All right, yeah, that brings us to an end. So have a great weekend. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again on the next one. Goodbye.